Vera's melancholy. 1. Endless days in infinite worlds. There are times when I think to myself, there's nothing to do in this tiny village. What a dull place to live. This wasn't the first time that Vera had complained about her hometown, the small country village of Delphi. Her frown eased slightly as she lay on the hillside near the village, eyes closed, feeling the breeze of the early summer. And where in this world would you not consider dull? Her buddy Sachi asked curiously. Vera sat up and leaned forward. I believe on the other side of the starry sea is a planet inhabited by gods who can answer all prayers and wishes, and everyone bearing a wish is on a journey to get there. I believe in our universe there is a world currently in a war against doomsday, where the noble and elegant souls of 14 Valkyries burn bright, if only for a brief but magnificent moment. You've been reading too many of these weird fantasy novels, but this village really is dull. When was the last time anything fun happened here? Funny you should say that. A new family did move into our village recently. Novelty and fun aren't the same thing. Despite what she had said, Vera decided to pay a visit to the newcomers. Sachi, however, remembered his family rules and walked back home for dinner. ... Vera gave the door to the newcomer's abode a gentle push. Much to her surprise, it wasn't locked. Anybody home? No sooner had the words left her mouth than the living room cupboard doors flew open, and out jumped a black-haired boy wearing glasses. It was followed by a tentacled blue slime. Make way, Tao, why did you let a stranger in? The black-haired boy gently pushed Vera out of his way and picked up an axe by the door. You leave me no choice. Since you have seen everything, there is only one thing for it. Thus began the biggest crisis of Vera's life. Vera's melancholy. 2. My backyard is slightly bigger than the entire universe. All I can do now is ask you to help me. The black-haired boy who called himself Ike handed Vera a kitchen knife. He walked back to the cupboard and began slashing at the tentacles frantically. Come and help me close this door. If a tentacle starts attacking you, use this kitchen knife to defend yourself. Ike's glasses were now covered in blue slime. Hurry, we can't let this evil demon cross into Delphi. Upon hearing his words, Vera helped Ike close the door. While they were pushing back the tentacles, Vera accidentally stabbed Ike twice in the back. Thankfully, Ike's healing spells were quite potent. I should explain everything to you. I am in fact over 1,000 years old. This door was a gateway to anywhere in the universe. That tentacled monster is an old one from the large Magellanic cloud. I went there to get something. Ike was covered in slime from head to foot by this point. He wiped his glasses with Vera's dress as he spoke. Is there anything else that you'd like to know? Who's Tao? Vera didn't seem to mind. An evil spirit that resided in a man-devouring castle. It has served me as a butler since I subdued it. Strangely, it behaved quite friendly towards you. Vera's parents always reminded her that people are destined to build families, and that it was futile to entertain dreams of anything beyond the homestead. Her buddy Sachi once told her that if a lively girl like her was to marry someone from a faraway land, the whole village would become unbearably lonely. The real reason Sachi said this was that he was something of a weakling, and was sure to be ferociously bullied if he ended up having to play with the boys. The human spirit is still too immature. I need to guide you both through the wonders of your childhood. Ike extended his inviting arms to Vera. You will sing every step of the way on your long journey to youth. From the Orion Arm to the eternal Yahanam, from the torrents of time to the depths of the starry sea. How far is beyond? Any place in this universe is just as boring as my backyard, he said. The scale of everything beyond follows the heart, Ike replied. Thus my heart is slightly bigger than the entire universe. Vera's melancholy. 3. The man who stole the Lone Star. I am the second rightful heir to the Andromeda Empire, and I have more than 200 titles to my name. You should call me the Princess Andra Basilis. The charming girl then crossed her arms, savoring the moment of her entrance into her mind, and giggling to herself in amusement. Her sole reason for gracing Delphi with her presence was to marry Ike. If you, he who conquered a quarter of the universe, marry me, my safety shall be guaranteed after my elder sister takes the throne. If I may ask, how big is the Andromeda Empire? Vera asked. I reckon there are more than 9,000 inhabitable planets. With so many stars in your possession, why come to steal my brilliance? So you aren't here to harm Vera? Sachi cautiously asked Ike, who was carrying the scrolls and globes of other planets. Of course not. I think she would make a great assistant. And her putting everything down, he clapped his hands. You like her? Me? No, not at all. I don't like her at all. Sachi looked away, worried that the old sage might discern his true feelings. He reached for a box full of photo frames. He grabbed a few at random, each picture depicting a different beauty. Look at them. They all said that they gave me their one and only true love. Did they? In reality, I was just one of their many lovers. Sachi did not know when or where he had heard the saying, but it burst out from his mouth in his moment of annoyance. With so many stars in your possession, why come to steal my brilliance? Vera's melancholy. 5. Roadside picnic. When Ike was taking a nap, his servants waged a terrible war against each other. The great wizard had subdued many gods and demons to serve under him. As the most formidable wizard of his day, Ike was in command of gods and demons more numerous than the entries in the dictionary. But who was the strongest of those under his rule? The gods and demons decided to find out for themselves through battle. Unfortunately, they seem to have erroneously regarded as their own three, who were neither gods nor demons: Princess, Sachi, and Vera. Ike only slept for 2 hours, but in that time 3 stars had already been destroyed. Why should I protect you? The princess pulled her hand away. The giant demon plummeted to the ground, its eyeballs gone. The dominant race of the Andromeda Empire may look lovely and sweet, but on their palms grow 2 special mouths, which they use to devour the eyeballs of their lovers and those they vanquish. Are we not friends? Vera wiped the blood off her face and appeared to be hurt by the princess's words. Yes. The princess blushed and looked away. I regard you as my only friend for what has happened. I was not referring to you, Vera. No, Sachi yelled as the gnarly jaws of the dragon closed around him. Do you surrender to me now? The giant dragon jeered. Surrender and concede that you are worthless, lowly rats, and I shall let you live. I surrender, let me go, Sachi screamed. Why, a lizard of your despicable breed should know better than to utter such foolish words. Even the geckos in my palace could crush you. The princess gave her wrist a twirl. No, this has nothing to do with me, Sachi yelled as the dragon cast him into the sky. Just like that, the battle between the dominant species of Andromeda, the giant ancient dragon, was over. Temporal, you won't get hurt if you just surrender. Sachi was knocked out of the contest and woke Ike up with a slap of a slipper. Vera also survived thanks to protection of the princess. You imbecile, the mere sight of you is revolting. Do not come near me, don't talk to me, don't look at me, nor breathe the same air as me, you lowly scum. Just could not have a lower opinion of Sachi. Vera's melancholy. 9. Death awaits in abyssal waves. As Vera and Sachi grew up, the chemistry between the four changed in subtle and inexplicable ways. Enough with excuses, Sachi said to Ike. Vera will not cease pursuing you, even if you never reciprocate her feelings. Ike was a symbol of a faraway land. He stood for the unknown, for that which was waiting to be discovered. A brave bird would never nest there, for it would be adrift in the winds of admiration. Ike retorted, no matter which way you look at it, being 1,000 years old makes you an elderly person. Then we are well matched in age. Princess merrily chipped in on their conversation. When Sachi finally mustered the courage to declare his love, he met with the most dreadful fate. Remember the ancient sword that Ike and Vera received from the old ones when they first met? It was what Ike needed to propel destiny forward. But now, Vera had her finger slipped by its blade, and a malicious ancient virus sapped the life out of her. This is all your fault, Sachi grabbed Ike by the collar. If the tragedy had not happened, Ike would have laughed it off, for he was a gentle soul. But this time he snatched Sachi's hand away. Don't you know how to rewind time? Please do it to save Vera. Even the princess begged. You don't understand. Only the future can save the past, not the other way around. Ike bit his lip until blood came flowing down. The local myth speaks of a silver age when people enjoyed a seemingly endless childhood that could last up to 200 years. This only made the sharp maturity a pain to bear. To the others, childhood was long gone, but youth was forever beyond their reach. To be continued in Vera's melancholy without Vera. Vera's melancholy. 10. Vera's melancholy. To revive Vera, Sachi, Ike, and the princess embarked on a spectacular and thrilling journey that lasted 20 years. From battling Signor Inferno to slaying the Star Devourer, the trio had even rescued 2 galaxies in the Galaxy Empire and eliminated 4 species of ruthless interstellar worms along the way. When Vera opened her eyes, she found herself in the arms of Sachi, now a hero of cosmic proportions. The dominant species of Andromeda, 20 years was nothing more than a few seconds. The princess looked lovely as always, but her countenance was a curious mix of genuine happiness and loss. Sachi, having lost an eye in his adventure, was now a tall and strapping young man. His flowing tears soaked into Vera's shoulders. Though still prone to tears, he was no longer his feeble-minded self. The years had been kind to Ike, who after all this time still had the same old smile on his face. I am but an echo of my time, Ike said as he began his preparations. As I've said, the past cannot change the future, for the predetermined rules of equilibrium are slightly more powerful than me. In the future, with its infinite possibilities, could save the world. Ike transformed Sachi back into who he was 20 years ago, and time reversed itself to the day of their departure. Everything seemed to remain unchanged between the 4, though they realized that the innocence they once shared was one thing that could never return. I am sorry for depriving you of your childhood, Ike said to him. Now go, the youth that you deserve awaits. I have witnessed every wonder in the universe for your sake, and this is how my childhood ended. Sachi summoned every last ounce of his courage as he stood before the girl of his destiny. I will never reach my youth without you by my side. What will her answer be? Editor's note. The author of Vera's Melancholy is now off living the high life with the royalties from the first 9 volumes. If you happen to see him in your corner of the universe, please help us to impress upon him the urgency with which we require the next volume. The Fox and the Dandelion Sea. 1. Dandelion, dandelion, ride the wind to a faraway land. The little fox chanted. He blew the dandelion flower and sent the seeds flying. He then spoke in a more serious tone. May my teacher's wishes ride the wind and reach the animal archon. A wind blew past us and swept away the dandelion seeds. Did they fly to a better place, carrying my hopes and dreams there with them? 1. When did this happen? Some time ago, behind the village, there grew a forest of countless lush trees. At the center of this forest was a small lake. The lake was like the stained glass windows of the Mondstadt Cathedral, crystal clear and shimmering in the sunlight. The sun shone through the leaves and glistened on the water's surface like fragments of gemstone. It was really something. The weather was cool that day. I was hunting in the forest when I came upon the lake. The shimmering water somehow reminded me of a girl I loved a long time ago. I couldn't remember much about her. Felt that her eyes must have looked like the lake, glittering as if holding fragments of gemstone. I became lost in thought as I stared at the glistening water. I walked transfixed along the lakeside, forgetting entirely that I was out for a hunt. I came to when I heard the sound of something freezing up. It was a mist flower growing by the lake that had just frozen the water surrounding it. Next to it was a white fox, its tail frozen in the ice. Poor critter. It must have had its tail in the water by the mist flower while it was drinking. Mist flowers are dangerous plants and can cause frostbite if handled without care. Extreme caution must be taken when handling them. As it saw me approach, the fox struggled in fear, but its only strove to tug on its still frozen tail. The fox whimpered in pain. Oh no, this won't do, I thought to myself. What a poor critter. It's gonna die anyway if I don't save it. I'll end its pain by bringing it home as my game for the day. I imagined what delicious fox stew I could cook with the carrots I grew. Just thinking of the hot stew gave me energy and brought a smile to my face. So I took out my hunting bow and slowly walked toward it. Be good and stay put. The Fox and the Dandelion Sea. 2. Be good and stay put. That's what my father's father had taught me. When I went fox hunting, I always chanted his words silently, so that my hands wouldn't shake when pulling the bowstring. But just as I was about to release the arrow, the fox lifted its head and looked me straight in the eyes. The eyes like the lake, glistening as if harboring fragments of a gemstone within. My head began spinning as if a strong wind were blowing inside it. My arrow missed its target and instead smashed the eyes, releasing the fox's tail. The fox raised his tail and looked at me once more before running off into the forest. I came to my senses and started chasing it. But who in this world can outrun faster than a fox? Eventually, the fox became smaller and smaller in my vision, until eventually it was nothing more than a tiny white spot in the distance. "Hey, don't go," I shouted, nearly able to catch my breath. The white spot slowed down after hearing my words. "Is it waiting for me?" I pondered. "If it's running for its life, it can shake off anyone in no time." Foxes are strange animals, even when they're running on a flat plain like the Windrise, where one can see clearly for miles ahead. They somehow still seem to disappear from view, as if they run into another world. It led me to my conclusion. The fox must be waiting for me. Convinced of this fact, I chased the glittering white spot for hours on end. Suddenly, a chilling wind began to blow. I stood there shivering, and what I saw next astounded me. What am I seeing? Suddenly, instead of one, there were now 2 white spots in view. More spots appeared. 3, 4, 5. They seemed to grow in number as the winds blew. Eventually, I lost track of how many white spots there were in total. Suddenly, there was a stinging sensation in my eyes as those same white spots flew right into them. I rubbed my eyes and discovered that the white spots were in fact nothing more than floating dandelion seed brought by the wind. The fox was gone. I mocked myself for my foolishness and went home. For supper, I had carrot and fox meat stew. That was entirely devoid of fox or any other kind of meat. Only the archons could know how much I hate boiled carrots with no meat. Despite my ravenous hunger, I eventually got to sleep. Woke up in the middle of the night to something stirring outside my door. Fox in the dandelion sea. 3. Having failed to catch the white fox, I went to sleep with only tasteless boiled carrots in my stomach. If not for what happened next, I would have forgotten about the fox by now. I awoke with a start to strange noises coming from outside my door. Could it be boars that have come to eat my carrots? I hopped to the bed and opened my door. To my surprise, there stood a tiny little white fox. Its fur was so white that it glowed in the dark, not unlike the way the sunlight sparkles on the water after filtering through the leaves. It must be that fox from earlier today. I thought again of those eyes that looked like gemstones in the water, gazing at me as if from the depths of my heart. My eyes still felt tired as I walked over to the fox, empty-handed. This time it stayed still and waited for me in silence. The closer I drew to the fox, the bigger it looked. By the time I stood before it, it had magically morphed into a human. She was a tall and slender woman with a swan-like neck and pearly skin. Her eyes sparkled like gemstone fragments in pools of water, and at night they seemed to shine like rays of sunlight that reached the water's surface after being filtered through the leaves. What a beauty! She looks just like the girl I fell in love with all those years ago, though I can't recall her name, but those eyes tell me that it must be her. I thought, this can't be. This must be a magic trick. But the strangest thing was that I just knew that the foxes could use magic. You'd believe anything after you'd seen those eyes. For all the fox's magic tricks, even her ability to morph into a human, nothing amazed me quite as much as those legs that were her eyes. For a while we stood silently in the dead of night. At last she spoke, though it was not in the common language I could somehow understand her. It must have been another of her tricks. I would have died by the lake if you had not come in my hour of need. He paused and continued. Although to die by the bejeweled lake is not necessarily a bad thing. We foxes are grateful beings, so you must let me return the favor. She bowed to me and her silky long black hair flowed down her shoulder like streams. Fox in the Dandelion Sea. 5. In the boundless sea of dandelions that exists in the middle of nowhere, I watched the dandelion seeds take off at the softest touch of the breeze. Suddenly I knew the answer to that question that had been lingering in my mind for years. So this is where all the foxes escape to when they're being chased by hunters. I thought, what a beautiful place. When I began teaching the little fox to speak her common tongue, my heart always felt empty like a wind blowing inside of me. When we talked, I would look into her eyes, which looked to me like gemstones in a lake. In those moments I felt like I was speaking not to the fox, but to a girl I used to love many years ago. That was why I felt a bit depressed when she was around me. It was like when someone you love has a baby. You may still get along, but you'll never feel the same again. The thought of her promise, if I succeeded in teaching her child to speak the common tongue, she'll impart our magic tricks to you when the time comes. Remembering the way she made that solemn promise to me, I knew she was serious, and that gave me determination. Could I morph into a flying bird once I mastered the tricks? How high would I be able to fly? Maybe I could also morph into a fish. and finally have the chance to go to Must Reef. I could also hunt using magic. I couldn't contain my excitement. No more meatless carrot stews for me. I lost track of how long I stayed in the dandelion sea, where everything sways gently with the wind. The reason was that the little one was such a fast learner. I taught him not only our language, but everything I knew in one package, including how to count, how to grow carrots, how to change window planes, and how to sharpen knives. We chatted when we took breaks. Why must you learn human speech? He answered swiftly, so that I can befriend the humans, of course. I continued to ask, why would you want to befriend the humans? He dropped his gaze. The fox in the dandelion sea. Sex. Why must you learn human speech? On one occasion I asked the little fox this question. He answered cheerfully in my language, so that I can befriend the humans, of course. Why would you want to befriend the humans? It seemed to make him sad, and he dropped his gaze. I saw a boy in the distant forest. He was dressed in gay. He looked and had eyes like the wolf, he added. I had just finished learning my magic then, so I was eagerly running on my hind legs. Running on the grass was fun. Sadly, due to height differences, foxes cannot see or smell the same thing that humans do. I'm sure you can guess what happened next, teacher. Suddenly I realized the horrible truth. I was lost. There was pain in his voice as he related the events of that day. He had wandered in some faraway woods and encountered vicious monsters. Just when he thought he was done for, that gray lupin boy suddenly leaped out of the forest and chased away the monsters. Without a word, he turned around and vanished into the woods. If I could morph into a human and speak the language, I could track him down and make friends with him. He said gleefully. I couldn't have but ask when I heard his reply. Am I not your friend? The little fox answered sincerely in the common tongue. Mother told me that since you're my teacher, I can only be your student, not your friend. But that seemed like a heartfelt thing to say to you, he said. He tilted his head in befuddlement. His fluffy tail patted the surrounding dandelions as he pondered over this difficult issue. I know, he burst out. If I know something that you don't, that will make me your teacher. If we are both teachers, that will make us equals, then we can be friends. Still unfamiliar with the common language, he did his best to put his thoughts into complete sentences as he spoke at pace. Teacher, please allow me to teach you magic tricks that only I know. Fox and Dandelion C. 7. Teacher, please allow me to teach you magic tricks that only I know. Still unfamiliar with the common language, he did his best to put his thoughts into complete sentences, eager to befriend me. He picked a little dandelion. Dandelion, dandelion, ride the wind to a faraway land. Little Fox chanted. It blew the dandelion flower and sent the seeds flying. He then spoke in a more serious tone. My teacher's wishes ride the wind and reached the animal archon. The wind blew past us and swept away the dandelion seeds. See, the animal archon has just answered my wish, he exclaimed merrily. What wish did you make? To become friends with my teacher. He lowered his head abruptly. It must have been tiring to teach him to speak your language. Our mouths are structured differently from a human, so I must thank you for your effort. We had not noticed the mother fox approaching. Her eyes were like bottomless lakes, and the little fox quickly hid himself in the grass to escape our gaze. When he has mastered human language, I thought. When he has mastered human language, she said softly. The fox in the dandelion sea. 10. The little fox kept waving back to us as he walked. His figure grew smaller and smaller until it became a tiny white spot, which blended into the dandelion sea and slowly faded away. After he had gone, the mother fox turned and walked out at me. Her figure grew bigger with each step. When she finally reached me, she had already morphed into a human. She was a tall and slender woman with a swan-like neck and pearly skin. Her eyes sparkled like gemstone fragments in pools of water. At night, they seemed to shine like rays of sunlight that reached the water's surface after being filtered through the leaves. What a beauty! She looks just like the girl I fell in love with all those years ago. Though I can't recall her name, but those eyes tell me it must be her. I thought. For all the fiercest the tricks, even her ability to morph into human, quite amazing as much as those bejeweled legs that were her eyes. For a while we stood silently in the boundless dandelion sea. At last I could no longer contain myself and opened my mouth. Is this the trick you're going to teach me, the fox's art of transformation? Yes, I am most grateful for all your help this whole time. She lowered herself and bowed to me. Her silky long black hair flowed down her shoulders like streams. Saying farewell to the little fox left emptiness in my heart. I soon became exhilarated again when I thought of the morphine trick that I was about to learn. Could I morph into a flying bird once I master the tricks? How high would I be able to fly? Maybe I could also morph into a fish, and finally have the chance to go to Masuri. I can also hunt using magic. Couldn't contain my excitement. No more meatless carrot stews for me. I shall ask you to stand still. She walked circles around me, her body going in size with each pass. No, not just her. The dandelions were also growing bigger. They were only up to my ankles when she started, but now they started suddenly above my waist. For long, they became towering trees. I started to feel something was wrong. It was then that I noticed the fox had become a giant. The fox in the dandelion sea. 11. I started to feel something was wrong, and then I had noticed. I had turned into a dandelion sea. Even if I wanted to protest, the dandelion had no mouth nor tongue for me to make a sound. All I could do was watch helplessly as the giant gently picked the dandelion plant from the ground, held it between her thumb and index finger. Dandelion, dandelion, ride the wind to a faraway land, the fox chanted, and then with a puff, the dandelion seeds began to dance in the air. I was caught in the storm and whisked away to a distant sky. The swirling made my fox dizzy. Those eyes that glistened like gems on the lake were rapidly disappearing. As I laughed in their unconsciousness, I heard her voice one final time before it too disappeared. And make a wish, or animal archon, I beg you to turn us into humans, for only then can we be safe from the hunting bows and knives of humans. When I woke up, I found myself in the woods behind my village. The woods were full of lush trees, and at the center of the woods was a small lake. The lake was like the stained glass windows of the Mondstadt Cathedral, crystal clear and shimmering in the sunlight. The sun shone through the leaves and glistened on the water's surface like fragments of gemstone. Really something, though the weather was cool that day. I was hunting in the forest when I came upon the lake. Her shimmering water somewhat reminded me of a girl I loved a long time ago. I couldn't remember much about her, but I felt their eyes must have looked like their lake, glittering as if holding fragments of gemstones. I suppose I must have become lost in thought and drifted into sleep as I stared at the sparkling lake. The Boar Princess 1. In the midst of ages past, every living being in this world had its own kingdom. Once there was a forest in that age, a playground of the boars, and the forest was the Boar Kingdom where everybody lived happily under the reign of the Boar King. The king had a lovely young daughter who had the prettiest snout, the whitest tusks, and the smoothest fur in the whole kingdom. The Boar Princess, beautiful and kind, gave the juiciest and sweetest fruits to her subjects every day. From sweets and sour berries to crisp apples to delicious tree mushroom, the Boar Princess always shared her delicacies first with her friends. Every boar in the kingdom adored their king and princess, and every day they praised him so. Oink, oink, bless our king. As long as he reigns over us, we will never starve. Oink, oink, bless the gentle animal Archon for giving our king such a kind and polite princess. There are tiny words written on the side. Dada, if I don't eat candy every night, and I pray every day, will I turn into a wild piggy? I want to be a wild piggy because they are so tasty. The Boar Princess 2. North of the Boreal Forest was a frozen tundra. The playful Barbados had not reached those lands, so they remained covered by ice and snow. Every creature who ventured there risked freezing their paws and hooves off. It's cold, too cold, it's freezing, my claws are going to shatter. Even the bravest, strongest Boar King could not withstand the frigid tundra. Oink, 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 my frozen snout is turning purple. There lived but a single lone wolf pup in that place. There are childish words written at the bottom. Dada, why does the little poggy have jaws that don't freeze off in the cold? Boar Princess 3. The pup was a carefree child who had bright blue eyes and slick gray fur. When he got angry, he looked exactly like the wolf head relief atop the Mondstadt Cathedral. But one day, when he was hunting in the forest, he ran into the evil squirrel sorcerer Wubaqua. Of all the beings in the ancient world, none were more evil than Wubaqua, not even demons and dragons. Wubaqua despised everything nice and swore to transform beauty into ugliness and turn light into dark. At the sight of the joyful wolf, anger boiled inside him. He cursed, "Squeak, squeak, angry am I shall spike his heart with the coldest ice, and he shall again know the meaning of hope." With that said, Wubaqua began to curse the pup with his magic, but the rash pup gobbled him up just like that, without the slightest warning. Wubakwa was so furious that he cursed the pup using the most foul and insulting words ever uttered by its squirrel. The pup felt the noise coming from his mouth, and only then did he realize his mistake. Aru, I am so sorry, Mr. Squirrel. I thought you were edible. The pup wished to apologize to the squirrel, but he felt his throat tighten and then loosen. The squirrel sat down to his stomach with a gulp. A sheet of paper bearing fine handwriting is taped to this page. Lily, this is why you should eat cautiously when you're outside. The Boar Princess 4. No one knew just what the chemical reaction occurred in the pup's stomach, but Wubakwa's curse magically came into effect. Because of the curse, the pup's heart was pierced and frozen by an icicle. The pulp became cold and mean forever after, and whenever other animals showed kindness to him, he would repay them with the harshest words or the most woeful of deeds. In the end, every animal loathed him. From then on, every wolf in the forest spoke of the pup in this way. Wolf, what a selfish wolf he is. Such an obnoxious kid. Wolf, wolf, what a heartless wolf he is. Let's stay away from him. One by one, the pup lost all his friends. The forest welcomed the lonely pup no more, so he had no choice but to head north. The blizzards that grew in the northern tundra kept most creatures away, but with his heart already frozen solid, the pup was no longer afraid of the cold. He decided to settle down there and became the lone wolf that roamed the tundra. There was girly writing at the corner of the page. Dada, but where did Wubakwa go? The Boar Princess 5. One day, the Boar Princess heard about the pup and was deeply saddened by its snore. So she asked her people about how to defrost his heart and turn him back to his former sweet self. She asked and asked, but only the wise fox and the elderly turtle knew the answers. Ack, ack, ack. Only sincerity and fire could melt such evil ice. Ack, 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 the fox replied. Friendship demands sacrifice. No friendship comes without sacrifices. Apologize for not knowing how to make funny sounds, the trustworthy Grandpa Turtle said. The clever Boar Princess knew right away what she had to do. She dried her tears and curtsied to the two wise animals. Oink, oink. Thank you. I'd like you to go see the pup with me so that you could be the first to witness our friendship. Fox and the Turtle heard the Boar Princess willing to invite them on a royal trip. Hearts were full of joy. They set out with the princess and headed north. A piece of paper that appears to be written on by the little girl's father's taped the pages. Turtles can't make noises and we can't force them to do so. This needs special explanation since Grandpa Turtle is so very polite. The Boar Princess 7. After venturing through the bitter cold and the swirling storms, the Boar Princess finally met the pup. The pup was covered in ice. Her once bright blue eyes had grown dim, and it all but forgotten how to bark. Aru, you have come at the right moment, for I haven't had lunch yet. Hearing his words, the kind Boar Princess could not help but shed tears. A warm tear seemed to melt a little of the ice at the tip of the pup's heart. Aru, why are you crying? Oink, oink, you are going to starve out here. I have never seen such misery in my kingdom. I will sacrifice everything to feed your hungry belly. The pup was stupefied by the words. Aru, miss, you must be mad. No one has ever dared say such things to me. And when the pup saw the determination in her eyes, his frozen heart melted some more. Nope, that's why. I will sacrifice two of the wisest and most caring members of my family just to feed you, and it's for the sake of our friendship. The fox knew what horror she meant and attempted to run, but he was pinned to the ground by the pup and the Boar Princess. Grandpa Turtle was so frightened by the sight that he retreated into his shell. The pup and the Boar Princess enjoyed the delicious appetizer of fox out in the snow. Next, they found a cave, picked a few mushrooms, built a fire with some moss, and treated themselves to tasty turtle soup. The pup felt the delight of sharing and making friends for the first time he could remember. His frozen heart melted completely, and he shed tears of joy. The princess took the pup by his paw, and the two merrily returned to their homes. Between the last pages was a card which had elegant writing on it. Honey, I think it would be best if we donated this one to the library. The Pale Princess and the Six Pygmies. In this distant past, the Night Mother ruled over the faraway land of night. Here, no light touched the earth, nor did a single tree grow. There was no life here but the horrendous denizens of the night. The Dark Mother was the source of all sins, and the land of night was the embodiment of her evilness. The cruel Night Mother, who had neither heart nor mouth, was always watching the land of night. and punishments were always unexpected. The only thing she could not bear was the occasional ray of moonlight that made it through the clouds. The light that penetrated the walls of darkness always irritated her. The moonlight forest was the only place free from the rule of the Night Mother. Only there could the people bask in the bright moonlight and enjoy the grace it brought to the living. Everyone in the kingdom of the moonlight forest was born with fair skin, light-colored hair, and bright blue eyes. Perhaps the constant lack of sunlight and the nourishment of the moonlight was the reason for the beauty, giving them appearance different from the abhorrent creatures lurking at the edge of the forest. Legend of the Shattered Halberd, Volume 1, Pressing Official Business. I am the great and glorious General Wei Yang, emissary of the Imperial Court on a royal mission. I demand that you step aside at once. General, the great and glorious is a military rank now, huh? I thought it was a civil office. Mir responded with not a moment's hesitation. Wei Yang's face turned bright red. Oh, an ignorant borderland heathen seeks to educate me on the matters of the court. Mir was unfazed. I was to be surprised if they overhauled the entire government bureaucracy in the space of a few years. Two broadsword-wielding martial artists in Wei Yang's party burst out laughing. Haha, so ends our grand journey to the capital. The cart finally makes it past 1,000 miles of checkpoints, only to get gridlocked like this at some tiny little inn out in the wilderness. Chin stared intently at Wei Yang's crimson-colored cheek before suddenly declaring, "You're a woman, a female officer disguised as a man." Claim was accentuated with a prod of his finger. An astute observation came the response from one of the martial artists. She is in fact the Secretary of Ceremonies. The two of us are military officers, one from the Imperial Guards, the other from the Imperial Escorts, both versed in polearm and sword. We are serving the office of the Imperial Grand Minister on secondment, and we are here under orders to retrieve the ominous swords. Although the part about the great and glorious General, ha ha ha, although that's made up, the bit about being here on official court business is not. The other martial artist chimed in to say, the ominous swords was something the mirror heard of. The story was that an iron meteorite had fallen from the sky 5 or 7 years ago, and convention dictated that as nation's treasure it belonged to the imperial family. However, a swordsmith by the name of Feng had taken it for himself and used it to illegally cast 9 swords, said that the ominous swords were cursed by the meteorite and could drain people's intellect. Surely they had caused quite the stir in martial artist circles. Good for you, said Mira as he shut the toilet door. Be even better for me if you got yourself out from that toilet now. Her disguise exposed, Wei Yan gave up trying to compose herself and spoke in a normal voice. She sounded more charming than one would expect given the circumstances. Officer Wei Yang is a cultured lady of the court. Unlike us, she cannot resolve her pressing official business by simply finding a discreet spot in the wild. Please, hurry up. Mir finished his hands and exited the toilet, then sat down at the table with the two martial artists. It is not at every border town that we encounter one so familiar with court affairs. The one that seems to be an Imperial escort officer sizes up Mir. May I inquire as to your personal history? My father, Mi Tingren, was a minister of Imperial banquet. He was framed for embezzlement of funds intended for the Imperial cuisine. He then resigned from his post and returned home. Mir paused to scratch his chin before continuing. My old man's not been himself for this to happen. I still intend to go back to the court one day and clear up the Mi family name. Legend of the Shattered Halberd, Volume 2, A Matter of Possession. Yum, very nice. Now that the spirit had possessed her body, Wei Ying was of a much speedier and gentler disposition. She took a tiny bite of one of Mir's stuffed pies, but it was too hot, so in an effort to avoid burning her tongue, she stuck it out of her mouth and panted for breath frantically. Truth be told, it was all rather cute. That came unexpectedly. I need some time to process. Mir, who had given up one of his eyeballs to appease the spirit, helped himself to a pie and asked, "Can you go over it again?" Very well. The meteorite was in fact the divine halberd. It was snapped into pieces by a commoner made in the 9 cursed swords, the ominous swords. That's one of the sword of mist. Adding in that pair, I found 3 of them to date. And what's your place in all of this? I was once the daughter of the Celestial Empire, but I have long forgotten my name. I was in charge of conducting trials and sentencing at the end. Judge, to use your parlance. Since the court of imperial entertainments was responsible for sacrifices and offerings, me, your father, had forced him to learn every last detail and word uttered in every known court ritual. Because most ritual involved encounters with bizarre forces and temperamental deities, he also knew a thing or two about how to deal with them. For instance, he knew that deities tended to guard the names closely, for knowledge of a deity's true name allows a human being to exercise absolute control over them. So he wasn't convinced this one had simply forgotten her name. The court wants to retrieve the sword to reconstruct the divine halberd. Mir forced himself to entertain the reasonability of this line of inquiry. I don't know. The master of this body knows nothing else. She is just deeply angry. She wants to prove herself. Wei Ying puts her hand on her chest. So what's the next step? Do I have to perform some sort of farewell ceremony for you? Mir stroked the bandage in sightless eye. And then do I get my eye back? Give me a name. She raised her head, oblivious to the crumbs at the edge of her mouth. Don't be ridiculous. The Imperial Civil Service examinations are overseen in person by the Emperor himself. How will I claim the title of Minister of Imperial Banquets with only one eye? So I have things to reclaim too. The remaining pieces of the divine halberd, she responded. Otherwise, this world and everything in it is going to burn in hellfire. Mir kept looking at her, but did not respond. You do not need to go with me. With the fate of all living things at stake, please allow me to hold on to your eyeball for the time being. You need not go with me, but with the fate of all living things at stake, please allow me to hold on to your eyeball for the time being. Legend of the Shattered Halberd 3. A dark westward journey. It is all that I can do for you, Mir said as he placed a series of dishes onto the table. He then sat opposite Wei Yang. Wei Yang's right arm, which was broken in the fight to the death that had just taken place, was still wrapped in bandages. He stared intensely at Mir for a long time. Mir just sat there resting his jaw on his hand and looking downwards. Neither of them spoke. Finally, Wei Yang attempted to use chopstick with her left hand. But alas, her dexterity was found wanting and she failed to procure a single meatball from the murky depths of the hot broth. Mir sighed, took the chopstick from her hand and said, Fine, I'll feed you. So there's still more that you can do for me. Wei Yang suddenly quipped a few mouthfuls in. Her mood remained unchanged. The court of imperial entertainments is dedicated to worshipping and making sacrifices to all you divine beings up above. Serving you is my family's job. In any case, when the gods make their move, what can mere mortals do but look on helplessly and accept their fate? At least that's what Mir thought, but he also thought it was better to keep that part to himself. Couldn't you use your powers though? I thought you said that each time you fight an ominous sword owner, you use telekinesis to make your pole arm levitate, swing your sword around, and so on. Surely chopsticks can't be any harder. That is a power bestowed upon me by my father. Only I have this power. It is solely for use in sentencing the guilty. I mustn't. Wei Ying's voice changed in tone. I mustn't use it lightly. Before he died, that guy said something really strange about the situation with my father. Mir flicked the candle flame while he spoke to relieve his boredom. Minister Mi was neither innocent nor wrongly accused. What on earth did he mean by that? The court wasn't willing to reconstruct the divine halberd, and being with the celestial empress daughter that possessed Wei Ying's body makes him an enemy of the imperial court. As if to signal that she understood what Mir was thinking, Wei Ying's face grew dark in the candlelight. He said, You don't need to help me any longer. You are a mere mortal. There is nothing to be gained from settling a score with the court. Mir replied, Speak no more of this matter. I must get the truth out of my old man first. Wei Ying said, Oh, we will pay a visit to your esteemed father. Then I must buy some fresh silk garments and make out first thing tomorrow morning. Mir replied, He's just a regular old man. There's no need for that. An unusually stern expression appeared on Wei Yang's face. Is this not your sworn duty? Volume 4. Legend of the Shattered Halberd. Master Plan. Even as a Buddha or an Adeptus would have found themselves powerless to do anything in this situation. This is the Sword of Flame, the Kataku Gosha. It was made from the shard of the divine halberd that was the Dharani of the Fire Realm. Sorry, in language that your master won't understand. It's made with the runes of Fire Realm, one of the God King's 9 realms. How could this westbound warrior display such mastery of the sword? Most who had been stripped of their intellect by an ominous sword lose their fighting instinct in any martial arts they had learned. Wei Yang nursed a broken arm and panted in the scorching hot air. Normally her abilities would enable her to fix broken bones, but the unquenchable flames burnt relentlessly at her wound. Her sight grew blurry as she lost blood. Mare stepped in front of her, guarding her from the warrior. I can see that you have a lot of questions. Fine, I'll tell you everything. I killed your father because he tried to stop the resurrection of the God King. And the reason I can manipulate the Fire Realm runes rather than the other way around is because the warrior from the east raised the ominous sword. It is because I am the warrior of Hunt from above made flesh. Legend has it that the Celestial Empire once went to war with the Asura. Prepare for the war. Celestial Empire selected soldiers from 3 realms and made them ascend to become a celestial army after death. Sometimes they were beset by inclement weather on the marsh, with thundercloud tornadoes surrounding them. Those zones are referred to as the soldiers of the celestial army hunting from above. No, impossible. A look of disbelief appeared on the warrior's face as the ominous sword broke into pieces, and he too was sent flying from his shoulders towards whatever destiny had in store for him next. In the chaos, Mir had brought out the sword his father had left him as inheritance. It was intended as more of a gesture of defiance than a genuine attempt to fight back. But unbeknownst to him, this was the greatest curse sword of all. It had once burned the entire world to cinders. Leviathan. The Fire Realm runes constitute the mystery of the Fire Realm. Leviathan was its pure, unadulterated, unquenchable reality. The sword had extinguished after the fire was spread, but having assimilated the realm of the Fire Realm, it burned bright once more. The whole world, destroyed again. Wei Yang fell unconscious as she spoke. Legend of the Shattered Halberd 5. Legacy of a Goddess. Your deeds have saved the people. You are indeed a great warrior. The Crown Prince, hands clasped behind his back, walked in circles around Mir, who lay prostrate on the ground. But Mir was unmoved by his words. Hand over the divine halberd and you may have the title of Minister of Imperial Banquets. Grand Secretary will be yours too within a decade, if you want it. Crown Prince sat down. Well, what is your response? A lowly commoner dare not speak till His Majesty permits him to rise. And now if I granted your permission to speak, it would be because you had instructed me to do so. We can't have that, as future lord of all the land. What a charade this is, said Nier as he switched to a more relaxed position. The official etiquette of the ruling dynasty does not require kowtowing for an audience with the crown prince. It should just be the regular thrice greeting. I noticed that you're on track to become emperor, so I thought I'd come and pay my respects. There's just no need to lord it over me like this. You, what about me? Mir snapped as he stood up. I will give you half of the divine halberd, the army of the Fire Realm. I'll offer to father, mostly to avoid another situation where we have remnants trying to stir up trouble. Can't hurt. As long as the portion I get looks the part, it'll be fine. A scurvy known as new national super weapon. Ha ha ha. Mir sat down impatiently right in front of the crown prince. I don't understand how you are such a fool when we're both raised in the same mother's milk. How dare you? I have nothing but respect for Lady Me serving as my wet nurse. It's only because of the virtue still instilled in me that I'm able to put up with you. Give the title of Minister of Imperial Banquets to someone who cares. I'm going home. The Crown Prince said nothing. How about Wei Yang? Mir cheered his food and acted nonchalant. Oh, for the meritorious act of retrieving the sword, she was promoted to Secretary of Ceremonies. She was not implicated in the evil plot by her father, the Imperial Grand Minister. The Minister of Ceremonies and the Grand Secretary both testify. I will see her every need is met. Something sounded odd about that, but that was fine. She was gone and his eye was restored. But to this day there was still a dull ache, like the phantom pain of a missing limb. Heart's Desire, Moonlight. Legend tells of a corner of the city that has been forgotten by the wind. To reach that place, one must stand before the fountain and close their eyes, then wait for 35 heartbeats. then walk 7 circles clockwise around the vault, followed by 7 further circles anti-clockwise. Upon opening one's eyes, one will find that they have arrived at the little shop. "Excuse me, is anyone there?" Vega asked timidly as she stepped through the door. As the door closed behind her, the bell that hung from it rang out, its crisp and clear sound filling the room and cutting through the dimly lit drudgery. The dull glow of twilight seeped gently through the frosted glass of the display case windows. Stacks of curious objects filled every part of the room. Vega made her way through the store cautiously, for fear of stepping on something and breaking it. There was no answer. Vega now began to examine the objects around her more closely. An obscure mechanical component, an ornate ancient lyre, a broken ceramic tile engraved with incomprehensible markings, a pair of old manacles, dented and scratched from years of use, for a crown that once belonged to an aristocrat. At some point, as she was inspecting these objects of no apparent utility, a shopkeeper appeared beside her. The shopkeeper's eyes were like those of a fox, with long, slender pupils at its center. That fang once belonged to a wolf king. Aside from the gods, it's probably the only thing left that remembers that land the way it used to be, every inch of it covered in ice and snow. She spoke softly. "Welcome to the store. Do you see anything that takes your fancy? Do you have anything here that can help someone to forget?" "Why, certainly." Vega clutched her chest as she pursued the question further. "To forget anything, even someone very important?" The fox-eyed shopkeeper's expression turned stern, and she nodded as she continued. "I know that the one you wish to forget is a young man with limpid eyes as clear as moonlight. He disappeared a long time ago and left a deep hole in your heart. Nothing else can fill that hole. All other blessings, no matter how joyful they may be, feel elusive and out of your reach, just like the moonlight before your eyes." Megan was stunned in silence. All she could do was nod along. The fox-eyed shopkeeper smiled and seemingly out of nowhere presented a bottle of wine. "This wine will help you forget your pain. Long ago, in the age when icy winds blew, our forebears brewed this wine in secret, deep within the frozen earth, to give them the strength to keep surviving. The method they used to brew this kind of wine was forgotten when the people's fate took a turn for the better. Their lives became more joyful." She tilted the wine bottle back and forth. "There is not much left. It seems you have an affinity with the store. This one is for free, provided, of course, that this is what you really want." Vega took the goblet of wine from the fox-eyed shopkeeper's hand. The goblet must have been adorned with a precious gemstone, but had since been removed, and now the only clue to existence was the empty, lonely indentation it had left behind. When Vega regained consciousness, she stood in front of the fountain. What am I doing here?" she wondered to herself. As the moon shone down brightly, she began briskly walking back home. The glow of twilight had all but disappeared now, and if she didn't get back soon, she had forgotten all about the strange story, from the route that had taken her to everything that happened inside. "She's gone," the fox-eyed shopkeeper said after the door had shut and the bell had stopped ringing. A young man, one with limpid eyes bright as moonlight, stepped into view from the back of the store. "And you? How many times has she visited now?" 6, no 7, 7 times. The young man hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Does the wine really work?" "It's not that I don't trust you, it's that." The shopkeeper smiled, even though the meaning of her smile was ambiguous. "This wine causes those who drink it to forget their pain, but your shared history is not a painful thing for her. All this wine can do is to help her temporarily forget her longing for you, and the grief of losing you. Whenever she sees the moonlight, she will see you reflected in it. Then memories will start coming back. The time you met at Ludi Harpastum, the afternoon spent beneath the tree at Windrise, the view from Cape Oath, the time you sneaked out of the midsummer celebration together hand in hand, the song and the feathered cape you offered to her at the assembly of the traveling bards. All of these are memories she will be reluctant to part with." "I do have another bottle of wine in my shop, one that can make someone truly forget everything. If you wish, I could give her that to drink instead." She smiled slightly as she watched the young man. After a long silence, he let out a sigh. "Tell me, why do you insist on leaving her?" "Ah, well, it's this. This is the reason." The young man reached into his breast pocket and took out a spherical object made of crystal. Unknown symbols could be discerned faintly flickering inside it. "I am led to believe that people who receive one of these will one day disappear from this world. If that is so, then the earlier I leave, the better. She is still young. If she forgets me now, then she will still have time. Well, sneered the shopkeeper. So you are one of the chosen. It would appear so. Do you know anything about what happens to the chosen in the end? The young man asked eagerly. She forced a smile but did not reply. I should be leaving. Now I'm the owner of this thing. I suppose I should get on with doing the things that are expected of me. And as she returns, what would you have me do? I think we should leave her to handle it on her own. What a heartless man you are. Heart's Desire, Crystal Glaze. Legend tells of a corner of the harbor that has been forgotten by the mountain rocks. The sound of the crashing waves. To reach that place, one must stand in the sea breeze and close her eyes, walk 49 steps away from the clamor of the crowds, then wait till the sound of one's own heartbeat drowns out the voices in the background. Upon opening one night, one will find they have arrived at a little shop. Hello, anyone in? Yuan called out. He tried the door and let himself in. The bell continued to ring after the door had closed, and as he made his way further inside, the faint sound of crashing waves seeped into the store like a distant memory. Piles of seemingly random artifacts were stacked all the way through from where he stood to the other end of the long and narrow shop. Yuan looked apprehensively at the range of items throughout the store, somewhat intimidated by the thought of his silken robes being covered in dust that was potentially even older than he. Old lanterns made of now yellowing paper, a giant fang from some unknown monster, brilliant black arrows siderated from the depths of space, a dull gold-colored geometric object built with a mortier and tenon crafted from an unknown material. As he picked up a small bottle filled with a fine white crystalline powder, he heard a soft voice coming from someone who now stood next to him. That salt formed from the residue of an ancient archon's tears. The voice caught him off guard, breaking the long silence like a stone disrupts the surface of a pool of still water. Startled, he dropped the bottle he held in his hands. But the sound of smashing glass his ears were anticipating never came. The shopkeeper, who had fox-like eyes, was slender for pupil, as someone caught the bottle and returned it to its place on its shelf. I can't remember who it was, but someone recommended this place to me. She gave a slight nod that acknowledged she had heard it, but was ambiguous as to what she thought about it. Welcome to the store. You see anything that takes your fancy? I've been looking for a gift for. She's a girl I like. I've been thinking of proposing to her, and I'd like to have a gift to go with it. Yuan nervously bit his lower lip as he looked up to face the shopkeeper directly. She had mysterious golden eyes that reminded him of Cor Lappi. She looked at each other for a long time in silence. She spoke. Very well. Her slender figure disappeared back into the depths of the store. When she had returned, she held in her hand an object that gave off a faint iridescent glow. On closer inspection, it was revealed to be an exquisitely cut 10-sided illuminating crystal. I trust you all have heard of the legend of the crystal heart. He had it, but he nodded anyway. It is made from a variety of crystal called illuminating crystal. Man-made versions exist, but they are pale imitations. True illumination crystals is capable of revealing the secrets of one heart, for it is formed from the unfulfilled desire and grief of illuminated beasts of the highest order when they reach the end of their life. Please take a look. She gestured to Yuan that they should both watch the faintly flashing images emerging from within the crystal. Tens of thousands of years flashed by before his eyes. The continuous shifting of the clouds. Stars turned to water and water turned to land. Snow melted and gave way to green pastures. Rivers cut their way through the open country. You watched cities rise like gnats' nests and kingdoms topple like toy building blocks. The twilight grew dim. Moonlight zigged its way across the uneven surface of the ocean. When Yuan regained consciousness, he found himself walking by the dock. Crystal he held tightly in his hand had become warm, as if blood pulsed through it. This is a wondrous crystal heart indeed, he thought to himself, increasing his pace as he walked on under the moonlight. All I need to do is give this to her. Once I've done, then I must. The bell that hung from the door rang out, crisp and clear. Welcome to the store. Do you see anything that takes your fancy? I'd like to exchange this, so I don't know if it counts as a gemstone or... The firmly cut crystal sparkled brightly, scattering rays of light scattered throughout the room. It was given to me by a man who's been pursuing me. He said that if we looked into the air, we would see many marvelous things. But somehow I just find it makes me feel uncomfortable. It's a beautiful gem, of course. Each time I think of him, I get so exasperated. Just wondering if the store would be willing to take it off my hands. I understand, but this is a highly prized 10-sided illuminating crystal. For what quantity of moral would you be willing to part with it? Actually, I did not want money, but let me see. What's this? It looks like salt. It's about time I went to Salt Trade to pay my respects again. If it's okay with you, this is all I need in return for the gem. Fox-eyed shopkeeper sat alone at the back of the shop, turning the geometrically flawless crystal in her hands. In you I have seen unpleasant things. That fellow's true nature, it is unbelievable. It is upsetting. That said, when it comes down to it, he is but a low-life opportunist who wishes to marry into a wealthy and prestigious family in the salt industry, and will do whatever is necessary to achieve his wish. Had this not come to light, it is entirely possible that they may still have enjoyed a happy life together, despite it not being born out of genuine mutual affection. After all, happiness is but a state of mind. It is not related to love. The Academy sipped wine and smiled mockingly at her own vanity. But the fact is, I simply have zero tolerance for people like that. On the other hand, it is delightfully straightforward, opening up to a complete stranger. I know that once you set foot outside that door, you may never have to meet one another again. So what does it matter if I really feel a little truth to him? Firstly, the closer two people become, the more one seeks to gain, and so you must be on your guard. But how could he have known? I'm sorry, this has all been quite the imposition on you, but it is truly wonderful to have this back. She lowered her gaze and continued, This is, after all, your heart that you have left behind. I'll be sure to treasure it. But don't you think it's fun, taking a trip down into the world once in a while, seeing what people are like nowadays? Heart's desire. Sapphire. Legend tells of a corner of the city that has been forgotten by the wind. To reach that place, one must stand in the center of the plaza and close her eyes, walk 7 circles clockwise around the plaza, followed by 7 anti-clockwise circles, take 40 paces back forward, and then wait until cries of birds can no longer be heard in the wind. Upon opening one's eyes, one will find that they have arrived at a little shop. The shopkeeper, who had fox-like eyes with slender lines for pupils, opened the glass double doors to let in the bright moonlight, which seemed to sweep up the stardust from across the night sky and sprinkle it down upon the counter. Everything from the stenchous flowers, the dust-covered harpastum, and the old books rendered illegible by years of erosion, to the now stringless old longbow, appears as the opulent halls of the ruling aristocrats might have done in times of old, covered in the shiny silver coating, though this was the silver that came from the cold light of the night sky. Hey, business any good these days? This audacious alternative to the courteous greeting most people would offer in the circumstances came from somewhere deep in the back of the shop. The shopkeeper turned around. A familiar customer was sat nonchalantly on an armchair in the part of the shop that the moonlight did not reach. Business is fine, but these days it would appear I need to watch out for burglars. The shopkeeper responded with a slight smile. That's it? You're going to turn away your oldest customer just like that? The customer let out a sigh. There's nothing in your shop that's worth me spending money on anyway. I mean, if I really had to pick something. Well, how was the hunt? What do you mean? You think I'm just here to offload some loot again? The hunter let out a displeased grunt at the shopkeeper's insinuation, but the shopkeeper continued to smile. Of course not. When have I ever heard you use the word loot before? On the contrary, all the exchange gifts, goods, free gifts, philanthropic donations, bestowals, and so on that you have so generously given over the years, why they must make you the most charitably inclined burglar to roam the streets now. Well, that's not why I'm here this time. This time I'm here to ask for something from you. The wine. A special wine you've got that helps you forget about the one you long for. Though a burglar by trade, this customer was nevertheless violent at heart. His words lacked courtesy, but the smile on his face entirely earnest. I'm terribly sorry. Somebody has already bought it. He looked, and somehow she was now holding in her hand the wine flask that he had discreetly slipped into his breast pocket earlier. Each item in the store is spoken for. This particular one has already been bought by a customer who will turn up at some point in the future. Seems your sleight of hand superior to my own. What a disgrace I am. The burglar of valor said with a pained smile. I discovered recently that the feeling of longing for someone is heavier to carry than gold. In my line of work, I'm forever leaping between rooftops and running along rafters. I need to cut out whatever unnecessary weight I can. I wonder if the girl with the sapphire blue eyes feels the same way that I feel. Suddenly the shopkeeper was startled by the jingle of the doorbell. The customer who had just arrived was a blue-eyed sorceress with a pole in her hand and a tall, slender figure to match. The marks on her face bore witness to her persecution by the aristocrats. Ignoring the piles of random objects strewn across the store, she marched straight to the counter like a sword lunging toward its opponent's heart. Welcome to the store. Do you ever see anything that takes your fancy? I have an item I wish to exchange. Her tone sounded cold but fragile, like thin ice in a moment that it shatters. As the sorceress spoke, she placed a giant blue crystal onto the counter. A burglar pried this from an aristocrat's silver goblet. He gave it to me as a gift, and then I was punished by my master for it. That was many years ago. I had thought that with the passage of time my anger would be quenched and my desire to see him again would fade away. Very well. What sum of more do you ask for in return? The sorceress gestured toward the table and counter on which stood the aristocrat's silver goblet with its gemstone missing. The fox-eyed shopkeeper turned the crystal in her hand, flooding the room with the brilliant blue light that was reflected off its surface. I see. Well, provided this is what you really want. When a person encounters a setback, the worry that everything shall come to a fruitless conclusion appears. The advent of fear causes cracks to appear in the mind. Death follows easily in the footsteps of fear, like a damp cold that to the unprepared pierces to the bone. For many, it is only in the moment that death is upon them that it dawns on them that the weakness has now been targeted with fateful consequences, and that at some point, therefore, that weakness must have been exposed. Lifting the blue crystal up into the moonlight, the shopkeeper gazed intently at it with her fox-like eyes with slender lines for pupils. She watched with delight as the crest of the ruling family came into view, faded out, and came back into view once more. Legends claim that peering into a pure gemstone at a specific time can reveal the past, the future, and even someone's true nature. Thus is legend claimed that somewhere in the world there is a field of dandelions as vast as the sea, or that once there were 3 bright moons in the night sky named Aria, Sonnet, and Canon, sisters who were parted by death in a great catastrophe, or that there were once a witch who could see death before it took place. Brandienne herself died from a broken heart, as he who had stolen it from her waited in distant lands longing to see her again. One thing she knew for certain was that even if she were to abandon these objects, the legends attached to them would not disappear. The way the stories ended would not be undone, in which case it seemed to make sense to collect all the legends and stories she could in her shop.